Hello, and welcome to the very first advice session on the Almost 20 podcast. Last week, I asked you guys to send me your current dilemmas and questions in relating to friendships and relationships between people. And you guys, being you guys, sent me not only questions about friendship dilemmas, but also sent me questions relating to this podcast and the story behind it. So after doing some thinking, I decided to divide this podcast into two segments. The first part of it talking about and answering your questions regarding friendships and the relationship dilemmas, and the second segment of the podcast is where I'm going to be answering your questions about the podcast and the story behind it. So, without further ado, let's dive into it. Okay, so someone asked, I have a best friend who started hanging out with someone who dislikes me and often badmouths me. How should I handle this? Now, first of all, I want to kind of sympathize with you about how you probably be feeling about this entire situation. Because trust me, I kind of understand how you probably might be feeling. You probably might be feeling some sort of betrayal, in the sense that you might feel like if the roles were reversed, you wouldn't do the same thing. It's like there's some sort of loyalty to best friendships, and you would kind of expect someone who you call your best friend to have respect for your feelings and consider you, right? And not just go talking to somebody who dislikes you and badmouths you, or who they know that you do not like or you're not in good terms with, and all of a sudden they start, hanging out with that person. So I kind of understand that. And I personally, I've had similar situations like that. I remember having a best friend then, although it's an ex best friend now. I had a best friend who at some point, I there was a pattern. There was this kind of dynamic in the friendship whereby it was basically whenever she kind of had issues with anybody, I was not supposed to talk with that person, right? If I ever spoke with that person, there would be a problem. Or if we both disliked somebody, there was just this kind of this person is not cool with my best friend, or we are not cool with this person. I was always kind of just having this loyalty to that, whereby I would, maybe even if I spoke to you, it's probably out of, maybe there's a necessity for me to speak to you, and I'd probably have to do that, or it would just be very short. It's not as if I would sit down there and ask you, my dear, how is life? Or I would go further and start gisting properly with you, or speaking at length with you. There wasn't anything like that. But I noticed something whenever I came to this, my best friend, she was always kind of loose with the rules, with this unspoken rule, whereby if I kind of disliked somebody or was in a bad argument with somebody, I feel to her it's kind of like that's just between me and the person, right? And me and the person's argument is just between the both of us. She would talk to that person, she would laugh with that person. And I remember a situation whereby I and her, we kind of disliked this guy, right? It was just there, and all of a sudden she was speaking with the guy, she was laughing with the guy, she was gisting with the guy, and then came over and told me that, yeah, the guy is not really that bad. He's kind of cool, and all of that. But then there was somebody who she did not like, and I kind of liked that person. That person was really cool, you know. And then when I spoke with the person, she was so pissed and everything. So I kind of understand the entire situation that is happening around here. But from your question now, when I kind of saw this question, I had a couple of questions in my own head to kind of understand this. Based on what you asked, you said you had a best friend. You have a best friend who started. So it seems like it's not like the person has low key been hanging out with the person and it just came to your mind or it started bothering you. The person kind of started hanging out your with somebody who dislikes you, right? Now, what I'd say you should kind of do is to kind of recall if there was any kind of recent quarrel. Like, think back to the previous or the last conversations you guys had and kind of wonder whether there was anything that would have maybe given much more information as to why this person just started hanging out with somebody who they obviously know that does not like you and even says horrible things about you. The person badmouths you. Why would your best friend, who is supposed to be loyal to you, there's this loyalty with best friends, like I mentioned, that whereby if somebody does not like you or if somebody's not in good terms with your best friends, you kind of automatically are not in good terms with that person, right? If not, you'd be kind of shitty. I mean, you wouldn't anybody would not want to have a best friend who is friends with their enemies or friends with somebody who does not like them. That's like, well, that's a major red flag, right? So you kind of ask yourself whether there was any recent quarrel or any recent conversation or any recent thing that you might have done to that person that would make them, throw away the whole rules of best friendship far away from them and in the trash. And then start hanging out with somebody recently, you said start hanging out with somebody who dislikes you. So if you've thought about it and you really can't pinpoint any conversation or anything that probably led up to it, then since this person is your best friend, right, and you obviously care about this and this is obviously affecting you, you should meet this person now, your best friend, right? And kind of tell them, hey, I noticed that recently you've been hanging out with this person that I don't like. And I've been feeling kind of bad about it because you know that this person does not like me and this person says horrible things about me. And this is the way I feel about it. And I want to know whether there was anything I did that would make you go and just start hanging out with this person that you obviously know does not like me, right? And if there's nothing I did, I just want you to know that this person says something about me. Maybe if it was not something intentional, like you're probably not doing it to hurt me. I just want to let you know that this person that you're speaking with or you're hanging out with really says horrible stuff about me, like and it really affects me. And I kind of feel bad seeing you, my best friend, someone that I feel like is supposed to be on my side, hanging out with them, and you hanging out with them, makes it feel as if you're not on my side, but you're with them, and it kind of feels like you're, indirectly kind of agreeing with what they're saying about me. It's kind of like I'm losing my best friend to somebody who's saying horrible things about me, you know. And the way the person responds to that will kind of give you information. Like the person now is probably going to respond and be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like I knew the entire thing that was happening with this person and you, but I didn't know it was so serious that it affected you this way. I kind of thought this person was really, really cool and I feel like hanging out with them. But if it affects you this way, then maybe I'll kind of reduce the kind of time I spend with them or even call them out on it, I'm with you. Like the person will reaffirm that, oh no, they weren't trying to like shift sides or go to their or the person that doesn't like you. They weren't trying to switch to that person's side. They were trying to just hang out with the person, and since they realize that it affected you, that they would stop hanging out with that person or maybe even confront that person for you. They would kind of reaffirm that they're on your side, and hopefully that's what happens, and that gives you the reassurance that, oh well, thank God, this person is cool, like everything is fine now. But then if your friend kind of starts making you feel like maybe their response is something like, oh, like why are you thinking about it too much? You should try to, you should grow some sort of thick skin and like whatever. It's not even that serious. Like I'm just hanging out wherever I want to hang out with. I just if the person gives you a response that it doesn't sit right with you and it feels like the person is not even considering you, keep in mind that this person we're talking about is your best friend, someone that's supposed to be on your side, right, on every level, and respect your decisions and respect your emotions and respect how you feel, right? That's like a healthy friendship. Now, if the person can't really, make you feel like you still have them on your side and it was a mistake, but instead they make your feelings feel less, and it's like, why are you bringing this up? Like it's not a big deal. They make you feel as if you even feel kind of stupid bringing it up to them. Then you would have to do some, re-evaluation and wonder whether this is the kind of person you should call your best friend. Someone that would randomly switch up on you. I understand that it's a very hard situation, and this conversation is probably going to be tough and kind of emotional to bring up. But I think it's better to clear the air with this person than to keep on feeling some sort of resentment and some sort of like build up, emotional build up and resentment for this person and resentment for your best friend. It's better to just go and handle it with a conversation with your best friend and kind of see how things go from there. Because ultimately, the way your friend will respond to you would really just give you a direction on how to go. It's either going to go in a good way or it's going to go in a bad way. But I ultimately kind of wish that it goes well for you and your best friend reaffirms that they are on your side. Okay, now somebody said, would you end a friendship if the person betrayed your trust once but apologized sincerely? Why or why not? Wow. Now, I tend to believe, like in this question, I tend to kind of believe that when it comes to somebody apologizing for something that they did you wrong, or somebody apologizing to you for something that they did you wrong, like they did you dirty, or they did you something that you kind of feel like, oh my god, why did this person do me like this? I don't really trust this person. I don't trust their motives, and they're not one of those people that will just walk out of your life and feel like, oh well, like shit is messed up. I should probably leave this person. They kind of probably feel bad about it and they come to apologize. One thing I tend to believe here is that actions speak louder. Like they speak louder than the words. And if somebody just, gives you a basic apology like I'm sorry, I'm really sorry that this hurt you, and that's all, like they are not actively trying to, remedy the entire situation. They're not trying to, kind of prove to you that they are really sorry and they feel awful about the entire thing. Then, yeah, you should kind of end whatever it is, whether if it was a friendship, right? If it's a friendship, then you should probably kind of end it. Now, you should kind of, before you even consider this person or even consider this friendship, you should kind of consider yourself and what you feel, because what you feel is valid, right? What you feel matters in this situation. Now, why I said this is that keeping in mind that this person has just, betrayed my trust once, just keeping that one in mind. If, like, the extent to which this person has betrayed my trust is one in which, I feel like it just cannot be fixed, like, all hope is lost, and I just don't feel like I can trust them anymore, and I want to cut them off. Like I said, your feelings are valid, and maybe the best way for me to handle that kind of situation or that kind of friendship in this kind of situation would be to, give myself space and maybe eventually cut them off. But then, if I feel like the activity or the deed that led to my trust being broken by this friend, in this friendship is one in which it's not detrimental. Like, ultimately, it's not detrimental to me like that. It's not that bad, but I still feel bad about it, And I kind of see myself maybe still fixing things with this person. And, I feel like it's something that communicating with them can work. I can still communicate through with them. And probably there's something that this person can do to show me that they still value my trust and I could give that person a chance again. Like I still feel like this thing hurts me. I still feel horrible about it, but it's not that bad that I just want to cut them off and never speak to them again. I need time for myself, which is fine, to process all of these things, but I still feel like communicating with them is something that I will ultimately feel like doing. I think a good example it would be that maybe they spread a rumor about you or a joke that kind of made other people to have the wrong idea about who you are. Maybe they said something bad and everybody has a very twisted or misconcepted opinion about who you are or your who you are at your core basically. And you feel awful and you don't trust this person again because they betrayed your trust, right? Now, if this person is able to acknowledge your feelings and then go and tell other people the truth, they own up to their wrongdoings, then maybe, I would actually not end the friendship and we might end up talking again. We might end up talking through things. And, this might even end up being a lesson that would strengthen the friendship. I think, I think ultimately, I would just consider that, this is somebody who betrayed my trust once. And if it's something that we can walk through, then I'll take the time I need, to process everything. And then I would eventually speak with them, tell them how I felt. And hopefully they own up to it and everything will be resolved, right? But if it's something that is so painful and I know that I just can't be friends with these people, I might eventually forgive them and I might eventually move on, but I might not remain friends with them. I would eventually have to end that friendship, you know? So them sincerely apologizing is a good thing. It kind of shows that they sincerely care about your feelings and you said that they sincerely apologize, so that's a good thing. But I think ultimately it's left for you to decide whether you can move past whatever it is that they did that betrayed your trust, or whether it's something that you can accept the apologies but end the friendship. It's left for you to decide. Okay, so somebody asked, I would like to know your thoughts on transactional friendships, not in a business oriented way. I guess what they mean by not in a business oriented way is like it's not as though you would say that this is a setting for a business whereby the relationship is purely transactional, right? You can say this is your work friend or your business work friend, whereby everything is basically the business deal. Oh, you're doing this for me, you can take in so hours for me, all of that. The person is talking about a friendship as a whole, whereby you meet someone not in the context of business or in the world of business, but rather it's a friendship whereby the entire basis of the friendship seems transactional. And the person is asking what I think about this. Well, first of all, we need to kind of define what transactional friendships are. And at the basics of it, transactional friendship is basically a friendship whereby both parties are not invested emotionally in that friendship, but rather the friendship is based off on what both parties can get. It's like a friendship it's like a mutual beneficial friendship. It's like a symbiotic friendship whereby both parties are only looking for what it is they can get from that friendship. There's no emotional investment or emotional availability in that friendship. It's not like your normal, oh, I'm having a bad day, let me call this person to kind of vent off or take advice from them. No, this friendship is purely transactional. Everything is basically party A is benefiting from party B, and not in a parasitic way whereby it's like they are oppressing them. Party B also has its own thing that it's gaining from party A, and that's the end of it. That's like the end of it. There's no how was your day? They sit down and just know they're basically just there for whatever it is they're gaining from that friendship. An example of transactional friendships can be seen in the academic side of things, whereby students, for instance, in the universities, students with similar matric numbers or students whose matric numbers are kind of close, they tend to have this friendship group, or if they do not have a friendship group, they tend to have these study sessions, or they tend to just be nice towards each other. And you would notice that most of the time, these students don't even tend to speak after the semester or after examinations or tests are over. It's more of a hello, hi, and the main communication, the main purpose of their friendliness towards each other, that relationship is based on achieving a particular goal, which is to pass the exams, to pass their test. It's like a help me, I help you in this situation. There are no, oh, I'm trying to genuinely find out who this person is. Let me uncover whatever this friendship might be. And I'm not saying that sometimes transactional friendships might not evolve to becoming emotionally good, stable, healthy friendships. But I think that most of the time, especially in schools, you can see transactional friendships much more prominent there. You know, Another example can be students who just meet up with other students just to get their notes, to copy their assignments, or to copy their answers to particular questions or whatever. And the reward here might probably be that that same student who's copying their assignments or copying their notes might be offering some sort of service or some sort of goods that they are selling in school or something. And maybe because that student is giving them, the answers to assignments, or helping them with notes, or even helping them to sign attendance, they would probably give a discount to that student. Or, there'll just be this sort of niceness. And that niceness is only existing simply because of the fact that Party A is benefiting from Party B, and Party B is also benefiting from Party A. That's the example. Now, there are good things and there are bad things that can result from a transactional friendship. I think a transactional friendship has its pros and its cons. The bad things, some of the bad things that can come out from a transactional friendship would be whereby there's this constant struggle to have something valuable to offer. Remember how I talked about the transactional friendship being a friendship whereby somebody has to always be offering something, like each party has to have something valuable that they're bringing to the table. Now, in a situation whereby a party does not offer any beneficial value to the other party, that friendship ends. Like, that's the bad thing about it. There's no substance to the friendship. The friendship is basically based on what value, what most times artificial value. I don't know if artificial is the word, but basically just some values that you would not use to stop a friendship if that value is no longer coming. But in transactional friendships, it's based on that. And once those benefits are off, that friendship follows it and it's off too. Another bad thing that can happen in a transactional friendship is that there is a tendency for people who are in transactional friendships, if care is not taken and if they do not understand the dynamics of such friendships, they can feel emotionally invested in those friendships in ways that if that person who they're emotionally invested in doesn't show up for them or turn up for them in the way that they feel like that person should have turned up for them, it leads to feeling hurt and disappointment. And those kind of feelings are not good. They're not it's not a nice feeling to kind of feel that somebody who you've been emotionally invested in, who you felt like this person is somebody that you kind of thought was a friend, but it turns out that it was only just what you brought to the table kind of friendship. And when it was time to, kind of see who your friends are, this kind of person didn't even turn up for you, or they did something that kind of made you question their behavior, and you came to the realization that you guys really don't even know much about each other, and the harsh reality is that this person is just a transactional friendship. It's just a transactional friend. I think that the best way to kind of have a healthy transactional friendship, and I think the only way that a transactional friendship can thrive, is a situation whereby both parties or the parties involved in a transactional friendship kind of have this understanding whereby whether that understanding is, verbally spoken about, or whether they have this social understanding whereby they kind of know that this friendship, they should not expect too much from it, and this friendship is not parasitic, it's not detrimental to anybody, it's not harming anybody directly or indirectly, but they are only just friends because they want to achieve a common goals. Transactional friendships can be good, like I mentioned in that school example, whereby students, who are there to achieve a particular goal, they form some sort of reading group and they achieve their goals and everybody goes a separate way. It's good, right? There's no harm, there's no resentment, it brings about more positive thing whereby the aim there, if you notice, the common thing in a transactional friendship is achieving a goal whereby the parties have something that they're achieving together and then that's what they're working towards. So transactional friendships can be healthy if only both parties are aware of the dynamic of such friendship and they do not emotionally invest themselves so as to avoid some sort of disappointment. They don't have this sort of expectation from it. So yeah, that's my take on transactional friendships. They can be bad if you do not understand the dynamics of that friendship and you expect too much from a transactional friendship, and then you might end up just feeling disappointed, right? But then they can also evolve. They kind of have the tendency to evolve. And then if both parties kind of understand the dynamics of the friendship, it can leave the people involved in a transactional friendship achieving their goals and leaving nobody feeling hurt or disappointed. Alright, on to the second segment of the podcast episode, whereby I'll be answering questions that you guys asked about the podcast and the story behind it. So somebody asked, what made you start this podcast? Well, in as much as I've already, spoken about the beginning of this podcast basically, and how the beginning of this podcast is kind of tied to my self-development journeys and the things that I have been thinking of and working off on myself, and then I decided to start this podcast. I feel like the primary reason that I would say that I kind of started this podcast was to kind of help myself in the way I speak. I kind of feel like I had always been someone that's quite outspoken, and then until recently, that part of me started, going down. And while I was working on my self development journey, I was like, you know what? I like that part of me. I like the part of me that talks and kind of says what's on his mind, right? So how do I do this? I don't meet much people every day. Like I have people that I meet, but what would I do first of all that I would feel comfortable with? And then I thought about it and I decided to kind of start this podcast whereby I'm going to be talking about self development and everything revolving around it, the theme about it, and the experience so far, relating with people who also want to kind of start their own journey, and help myself speak properly and enunciate the words properly. So I feel like there's a lot of story behind it, but I think you would get the fuller gist if you were to go and check out the episode I recorded, because I said a whole lot about this in the first episode. I think it's called Welcome to Almost 20 introductory episode. It's just like 4 episodes or 3 episodes before this one. So you should probably check this out. But basically, the starting of this podcast was just a way for me to kind of improve on a part of myself while also offering value to people who would listen, to kind of connect with them too, you know? So yeah, that's it. Okay, so someone asked, will we be having guests on the podcast? And when I saw this question, it actually took me a while because I was thinking like, should I have guests on this podcast? Like, do I need to not solo host this entire show for the first season? I mean, in as much as I have already kind of planned everything I'm going to say and host, I know, talk about for this 10 episodes that I'm going to release in this first season, I kind of thought of the idea of having a guest over. But it's just like we're starting this podcast, so I don't really know yet, So I just wanted to do everything solo for this first season to kind of give you guys a feel of who you're going to be listening to. I think personally for me, I've always kind of loved listening to podcasts with solo hosts because I kind of get to know who I'm listening to, right? And I think I only like a few with co-hosts because for some reason having co-host or listening to a podcast with multiple guests whereby you don't even get a single episode whereby you connect with who you're listening to or to know what they're all about. It just leaves me feeling somehow, not knowing who I'm listening to, just like I'm just listening to a random show. I kind of like to connect with who I'm listening, so I kind of felt like I would give you guys that, maybe to just kind of know who you're listening to kind of connect with me, um your host. And then maybe in the subsequent seasons, let's see, when we're having a season 2, we'll probably have a couple of guests over. It's one step at a time, and I'm just kind of excited to see how everything rolls out. But I think for the first season of this podcast, the remaining episodes, I'm going to be hosting it by myself without any guests. There wouldn't be any guests. But after the first season, who knows? Let's see. Stick with me, and who knows? We'll probably have a guest on the podcast. I also received a couple of funny comments from you guys who did not ask questions, but rather were making comments. Some people talked about how they wanted to know whether I could swim. That was, if you don't understand, this is from the previous episode where I talked about navigating friendships, and I mentioned something about me swimming was not relevant to them because I was trying to give an explanation, and I received a couple of messages talking about whether knowing how to swim, me telling them about me swimming, it was an important thing, and it was just funny. You guys, here's the deal: I can actually swim, okay? I can actually swim, but I don't know how to stay afloat. If you just throw me in a pool of water, I can probably move around the water. But if it's for me to stay afloat and just chill on the water, I'll probably drown. So nah. Some other people complimented the podcast, talking about how much they enjoy listening to it, and complimented me as well for doing this. And I really appreciated each and every one of it. It was really amazing receiving your messages, and yeah, I hope that I continue to provide the value that I provide to you guys. And that's all I've got for today, folks. As always, thank you for listening, and I appreciate you for tuning in. Don't forget to follow the podcast. Don't forget to hit the notification bell beside the follow button if you're listening on Spotify, so that you receive a notification anytime a new episode comes out. Don't forget to read the podcast. Check out the Almost 20 podcast on Instagram at Almost 20 podcast. The link is in the podcast description below. Follow me, your host, on Instagram at _ Guy Martins. Once again, the link is in the episode description. New episodes every Sunday. And that's it, guys. I'll see y'all next Sunday.